And welcome everybody to the second episode of Polybius. Thank you so much for being with us today in whatever form and kind of identity you're using as an avatar, or if you're just watching this in like what I call the boomer platform. So LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or whatever. Thank you so much for being with us today. Um, Very excited for the second episode. The first one was very interesting, and the community is growing. We got more panelists joining week after week. We will have a few more surprises. I cannot really tell you too much about right now, but I will be able to tell you a little more in a couple of weeks. And we got three amazing panelists today. One of them was already with us last week, while the other two are new entry, at least for Polybius. There is something different this time. If you listen closely, you will hear a beautiful, relaxing, Brian Eno-ish ambient music in the background. I would be like Lior will tell you a little more about that when it's his turn. But for now, just enjoy the moment, okay? So first, before we start with the topic, I just want to take a couple of minutes to introduce my guests today. So let's start with Luca with the purple hair and the bluish shirt. Sorry, I'm a little colorblind, so I'm not sure if it's blue or purple. Luca, can you tell us a little more about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, the hair. I put black, but it became purple. So the metaverse doesn't work. Joking. So, yeah, well, I come from the travel space, specifically vacation rentals. I started a kind of a Airbnb thing a few years before Airbnb, which allowed me to travel around the world. So I'm basically a traveler. I traveled for 10 years. That was leveraging the power of Web 1, the web of the individuals. Then Web 2 came, destroyed my life. Airbnb destroyed my business. I had to kind of make a startup, and I realized I hate startups. I hate the fact that everything is about, returning for investment. So the part of what people become part of something bigger, which is a profitable company. And then I discovered Bitcoin first, and in 2013, and then Ethereum. So Web3 is great because it's again people, this time not lonely people, or like individuals, but communities. And so I launched a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization called Trips Community, trying to make an alternative to Airbnb. So far failed greatly, but very happy to have done this journey, and we are still on it. Thank you for inviting me here.
Well, thank you. And we know each other in real life as well. Even though somebody told me that calling it real life, it's a boomer thing. So I don't know. I don't really know how to call this now. But it's great because like the introduction you made was like the anti-motivational kind of speech, the most anti-motivational kind of speech I heard in my life. But that's great. It's just great honesty. That's great. Michael, so you've been here before. People both in the metaverse world and in the travel world pretty much know who you are. But maybe a couple of words about yourself.
Sure. So I'm the counter to Luca because everyone tells me I'm overly positive. So I'll just stick with that. So my name is Michael Cohen. I'm a managing director of an organization called GAIN, Growth Advisors International Network. And we are a global organization of travel, hospitality, restaurant, innovation, and tech advisors. So we do have a metaverse and immersive technology practice within the organization. I've been involved through advisory and other startups over the last 6 to 7 years on different types of immersive virtual hybrid implementations. And just really happy to be here today and contribute to this conversation.
Thank you, Michael. And let's go to Lior. And Lior, first of all, well, introduce yourself and tell us a little more about this beautiful music we're listening to.
Hi. Hi. Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's my first VR convention panel. The
Mm.
music that you hear was made by our AI algorithm. It was chosen for a specific time of day and environment, and it was created um, after taking parameters in mind, like several hundred weather parameters as well. And I'm the co-founder and CTO of Get Sound AI and Soundscape City. And this is what we do. We try to translate the environment into sounds. It's very changing and different between them. Right now, you hear just one 4-minute track, but it's very different each time. And I'm also a musician and programmer. And yeah, that's me. I'm from Israel, by the way.
That's great. Look, as a failed musician, and
Mashallah.
we were talking a
Toda
little
raba.
about it before, but it's like my dream life, technology and music. So, but I failed at both of them, so I just need to moderate panels now. um, okay, guys. So let's start. For what you need to know, and Michael, you know the problem very well. Is that Luca, maybe you know it because you've been in the travel space as well. But Lior, I think this is an important introduction for you. A lot of the things we say about Web3 in general, not only the metaverse, uh, can seem pretty much obvious to us, but our audience is mainly people from the hospitality space. And I always say that, at the end of the day, and I spent my first 10 years of my career in hotels, hoteliers should be more concerned about the quality of the pillows and the mattresses than the quality of the tech, right? So the only thing I'm asking you is just try to be as low tech as possible when it comes to explaining this kind of problems that we're addressing today. Okay, and so let's start with what is for us is the elephant in the room, but I think it's still probably under discussed, especially out of the Web3 and crypto world, and that's interoperability. So I will ask you something, and Luca, you just you do have a DAO, so it's probably you're the best person to introduce the problem itself. Can you tell us more about what is interoperability and why it's so important, not only in the metaverse space, but just to overcome the Web2 paradigm?
All right. So it's basically at the lowest level. It means that things work together without anything in the middle, like Lego bricks. So if you have Lego bricks, you can build whatever you need. Okay. But if you have Lego bricks which are not compatible with each other, so not Lego but something else, then you have to rebuild everything from scratch. So in the hospitality space, you can think about booking.com, and somebody wants to make another booking.com, they have to really start from scratch. Because Web 2 is not mostly, there's a low interoperability level. In a fully interoperable level, you could simply fork the code of booking.com and also fork the listings. So you can start from the end. And this is very close to what happens in open source code, basically. So the travel space today is mostly not interoperable because of the structure of Web 2. And with Web 3, we hope it becomes more interoperable. So that means better software, better services, cheaper also for everybody. Yeah, I don't know if this answered the question.
Yeah, it totally answered the question from a technical viewpoint. So thank you so much for that, Luca. But Michael, from you, I would like to understand more how this can actually impact a hotelier, or for that matter, even a shop or whatever kind of business that would like
Sure.
to do something in the metaverse. So let's try to understand, other than the technicalities behind that, what is the barrier that the lack of interoperability creates?
Yeah, so Luke did a great job of boiling down some very technical items to something that was quite understandable. So nice job. Here's the reality is, there are two major pressure points that are battling with each other right now in regards to interoperability, in regards to the seamlessness of Web3 immersive solutions and the metaverse. I mean seamlessness both for launching and growing destinations or locations. I'm talking about virtualized digital twin, all those kind of things. And from a consumer perspective, the guest, the passenger perspective. So the reality is that, the majority of executions in the metaverse and in immersive technologies are not NGOs. They're for-profit businesses. So there's the motivation to create a moat around your business, competitive differentiation, profit, and growth. And that's counter in many ways, in some ways, I should say, to the vision and reality of what Web3 is and true interoperability can be. So the reality also is that from a guest, passenger, or consumer perspective, to get adoption, if people have to restart the process, regenerate new avatars, repurchase new NFTs, which are keys to experiences and to pre-experience travel and hospitality and restaurant locations, or post-experience and share the experiences they had when they were on premise. If avatars, NFTs, data, payment details, if that always has to be reintroduced, repurchased, recalibrated every time you hop into a different immersive platform or immersive experience, that creates drag. So the whole conversation today is about how do we eliminate the drag while still creating an environment that has some level of proprietary-ish protection for investors and companies that are looking to grow the presence in the metaverse and Web3 implementations.
Okay, that's great. I'm just uploading something here. You should be able to see it now. This is a quote from Mark on the panel yesterday, and I think it kind of centered the problem, right? And I really like it because in a few words it explained the problem. And what it says that without interoperability, basically the metaverse will be a 3D version of centralized internet. Unfortunately, Michael, this is still for you. This is exactly what I'm seeing now for the majority of the metaverse hospitality projects. And really, when I hear hotels entering the metaverse, and I'm quoting with my hands right now, is basically they're just building a digital twin in VR and in a metaverse. So I think that to a certain extent, a big part of what the metaverse or metaverses is/are today is completely to Web 2. There's nothing to do with Web 3. Do you agree with that, or am I being too pessimistic?
I don't necessarily entirely agree. I think that let's be realistic. There needs to be stages of growth. There needs to be layers of execution. And right now, the Citizens Ends of the world and people like that who a year ago, or some other brands, they did their sandbox kind of, they're kind of proprietary destinations on proprietary metaverse platforms. Let's call it that way. And that was an entry point. Was it marketing? Was it hype? Sure it was, but it was an entry point. And I think that we have to be realistic that when you have 150 years of travel, hospitality, and restaurant industry business practice that over the years has been, innovative and has changed. There's still some blocking and tackling required in our industry. to execute any kind of interface, any kind of utility for a passenger, guest, or customer. And now it's virtual and metaverse and immersive. So I don't entirely agree. I think that there is there's crawl, walk, and run. And we are at the end of the crawl and we're at the beginning of the walk. And what's going to happen is, because there are multiple groups that have spawned recently that are focused on interoperability and standards, we're going to get there. One of the organizations is very Web3 oriented. So Luca, part of Luca's world, which is, the OMA 3 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Open Metaverse group. And then the other one is, the Metaverse Standards organization, which is really all the Web2 companies, the Facebooks and the Metas and everybody else. And many other companies who are very innovative, like Rondiverse and growing companies like that, who are involved in that particular standards organization. So there's going to be a amalgamation of the two. We are going to get past this VHS versus Betamax, stage, like I mentioned last time, and we'll get there.
Look, before I move to just let me ask you one final thing, because again, maybe some of the people watching this or listening to this are not very familiar with what the Metaverse Standard Forum is, or what OMPA 3 is. So can you elaborate a little on that, and maybe tell us a little the differences between the two, if they're working in silos or they're collaborating?
Yeah. So both the organizations were spawned out of the requirement and need for interoperability and standardization. One is more of as Luca was talking, more of an open source, more of a creating their raison d'etre, though, their whole focus is about creating what's the right word? A metaverse or immersive platform world that is owned by all. And the other is creating a standard organization that has frameworks that the member organizations, who are the major Web2 companies of the world, are looking to be the kingmakers or the United Nations of interoperability. So one is more about open source, which means creating a free, standardized, platform for great ideas, great execution, and to create really seamless movement through the metaverse and immersive platforms. And the other is, I would say, more rigid, trying to own the standards and be the leaders and be the kingmakers or queen makers in regards to what are the appropriate standards to eliminate silos. They both are working to eliminate silos. That's really important.
Okay, that's a great, that's a great way of putting it. Lior, I do have this in front of me. This comes from Alex. If I don't, it comes from Alex. It says, silos are pretty much part of human nature. And it makes this interesting, reference to Babylon, Tower of Babylon. It said, look, have you ever imagined a world where we all speak the same language? But don't you think that this, and especially with what you do, right? Don't you think that this is pretty much against the original idea of what the web should be? And I'm talking, web pre-web 2.0, so web 1 and eventually web 3.
I think that when we're talking about things that are evolving in a sort of an evolutionary way, we can't talk about it in like it should be, because when the internet started, no one knows what will happen, and no one knows that there will be trolls, and it's sort of like like our evolution, like the physical evolution. Something is evolving. You have the good and the bad powers trying to control it, and we need to keep the pace, go further, go into the future. And like the real world, I think the good will overcome the bad. I think that eventually those silos will each of them will be advancing us further in a specific field, in a specific area. We are eventually all, we are all cells working in the same organ in a way. So I think we will get to that future pretty soon, sooner than we think.
I tend to agree because, like, look, I always say, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there is a video that I cannot show you here, otherwise we'll get a copyright strike on YouTube. But it's an interview of Bill Gates at the David Letterman show from '95, if I remember correctly. And Gates is trying to explain to David Letterman what the internet is and what the internet could do. And it's a very interesting conversation to me. And I like, check it out if you haven't. It's a very interesting conversation because if you change the word, if you replace the word internet with metaverse, that's exactly the same conversation we're having today. And Lior, I agree.
I think he was
totally
talking about emails. He was talking about emails.
No, it was
right?
it was the internet. Look, the one I'm referring was about the internet because at some point he says, and David Letterman asks something like, "So what we can do with this internet?" Like, and Gates says something like, "Well, for example, you could listen to a baseball game, right?" And it was 95. And David Letterman said, "Yeah, but I have the radio for that. Why do I need the internet?" And so I think that we are at this level of naivety. I agree with you. That's going to naive. But do you think that because you're seeing it in a very naive way, in a way, my fear, I'm a little less optimistic here. My fear is it's not a technology concern. I think that to a certain extent we could agree on standards, but I'm thinking more in terms of companies that want to keep the metaverses in silos because of they can own the data, they can advertise you, and and this agnosticism could actually create damages from a financial point of view. Do you agree with that, or do you think that we can flourish?
Can I answer that, or
yeah,
is it, yeah? Okay, you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead, Michael. It's okay.
Okay. Look, that's business, and this is not a charity. So what's going to happen is there'll be, as you're saying, is that good intention, smart people, consumers will make decisions. Whichever standard organization, if it's more open source or it's more, the 25 leading Web 2 companies and so on, whoever ultimately nails it. Oops, sorry. I lost my space here. 1 second. Whoever ultimately nails it in regards to functionality and ease of use will win, and that will become the standard of what the metaverse and immersive technologies are in the future. Let's remember that Web 1.1, so, graphical internet, was AOL, Prodigy, CompuServe, Delphi. This is 1992, 93, 94. And they were all that was literally silos. And then the world changed. World Wide Web came, and it became much more open. And then, Web 2 companies came and created new silos. And now we're in the same kind of paradigm shift now. So silos will dissolve in some way, shape, or form based upon, seamlessness, ease of use, and financially successful executions in the metaverse.
Yeah, makes sense.
I also remember the testimony of Mark Zuckerberg in the Senate. That was a moment when you felt like, okay, a private person created something huge, and now he's obligated to something governmental. So I think that even if someone will take the market and it will own everything and we will be in his game, at the end, he still lives in a society that, he needs to still hold some help me, Michael.
some
hold
there's
account.
some regulations.
Hold account.
Yeah.
Account.
Yeah. Hold account. Be responsible. Be responsible. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the word.
Luca, can you see this quote from Justin that I just uploaded?
Yep. Many were drawn.
You agree with this statement?
Okay.
Because like this is my problem with that. Again, okay. So I'm trying to understand, because on one side,
Yeah.
I'm sure that at some point the community will look. We don't want a new version of Web 2.0, and to a certain extent, newer generations are even more, sensible when it comes to decentralization. So do you think at the end will be the community to lead the change to the Web3 paradigm and interoperability? Or do you think that at some level, financial pressure will always be a motivation for creating more silos?
Well, first of all, what Justin says is true, but we can read differently. So many were drawn into Web3 by a vision of wealth. Yeah, this is true. Most. But before we could even talk about money, somebody had to build it. And those who build it, and I'm referring to Bitcoin, were not trying to get rich. They were trying to make a kind of money, which is, separation of money and state, etc. So they were idealists. And then the second part of the sentence is, and not many idealists are willing to create something open. And I replied to this with what I said: you don't need many. So the few idealists are the ones who actually create these things, right? Yes, most people will not be idealists, but the ones who actually bring the change are. So where are we going to go from here in the future? Well, most people are going to keep coming to Web3 because of the money. But there's a core part of people in Web3 are not there for the money. And they're the ones you don't hear about, and they're the ones building their open protocols and the stuff which we will use in the future. So again, he says something true, but this doesn't mean that he says it in a negative way, but actually I read it in a positive way, right? So what was the question, the second part of the question?
Well, you pretty much asked that because that
Okay.
was the main point, and I just I'd never seen it that way. That's a very interesting angle, and because before you made me see that under these circumstances, I was pretty much agreeing 100% with the statement. But yeah, like the birth of Bitcoin, there were no money involved. It's just a community.
Yeah, and even if you look if you look at this last cycle in crypto, like lots of noise about money token, dog tokens and stuff like this, but the real protocols which are still there and people are keep building are like ENS for domain names and Safe for the multi-sig Safe. Those people are not about the money, and those people are not noisy and you don't hear about them, but they are actually advanced in the space. So it's always the few building, and all the others is making noise, basically.
Yeah, and I think what also is important is that it requires both constituency, both cohorts need to be actively involved, right, Luca? I mean, if it's only let's call them academics or altruistic, that's great. But if it's only them, then they're they're building in a forest where no one hears when the tree falls, right? And then the other side, if it's only for profit, then it becomes incredibly siloed and becomes very limited. Like people forget, and I know I do this a lot, but it's important. People forget that in the turn of the century, there was almost 400 car companies in the United States. In the United States, there was almost 400 automobile companies who produced combustion engine automobiles. Some had different ways they did it. But between 1900 and 1920, it went from almost 400 to 45. And then from 1920 to 1947, 1950, it went to like 22. And now eventually it's gone to obviously like 3 or 4 in North America. So these are all parables that are relatable, I think, to what's happening with the metaverse, is that you need to have ingenuity and you need to have commercialization. Because as I said it before, and I think both you guys would agree, and so Simon, is everything that we're talking about needs to be driven on three principles, which is utility, engagement, and loyalty. And if that's commercially driven, or it's technologically driven, or it's altruistically driven, it's going to be driven by the right people eventually.
Can you elaborate a little on that? Because that's a very good way of putting it.
Well, I guess like also people forget that the internet, which is the backbone of what we're talking about today, as Luca and Lior both mentioned, that was a project by academics and some in the military industrial complex. But let's use the white hat versus the black hat and say those are like really brilliant academics, men and women, scientists, engineers who, designed and built the backbone of what the internet is and Web3 is and the metaverse is resting on, based upon use of new technologies, data flows, networks, to transfer securely, transfer data and communication and sharing of content. That's where the internet started in the 70s. And now we're talking about this. So I'm not
to a certain extent, this is what happened to the metaverse as well, because like we can see the use of VR, for example, for military training, as far as the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also imagine 100%. What would happen.
Yep. Go ahead.
Also imagine what will happen if instead of the first phase of the internet, we would start with the metaverse. How big the mistakes we did with the internet could be, how disastrous it could be if you start. So there is some evolution, some natural evolution in the tech as well, as I see it. So we come more prepared now than we used to be. And I think this will protect us in many ways.
So do you think, okay, that's a good way of putting it. Do you think that like Web 2 was like a learning curve, like an error we should not make again?
For sure. For sure.
That's
I think
very
everything that a human, looking at it. I think that everything that humans create are basically comes from the same creation that created us in a way. So we act like someone acted with us. So every phase that we are going through is built on an early phase that we had to go through before. This is how I see everything here.
Okay, now you're getting very philosophical.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I know that if I get into this rabbit hole, we will talk for a couple of hours. Michael.
I'm just quickly going to totally agree. It's about layers of innovation. It's about, building upon the successes and learning from the failures, which is cliches, but it's true, of previous technologies, previous human, ingenuity, previous socioeconomic and psychographic trends and executions. It's layers of innovation upon layers of innovation. Things that work stick, things that don't fall away. So like this quote right here, I'm just going to jump. I love it because metaverse users will decide which systems will dominate. So Hassan is a smart dude. I totally agree in many ways, but it's also like, will the PS2 beat out the Xbox? Those are silos. I used to have a Cube, like another gaming system that fell away because it didn't innovate. It didn't create seamless onboarding and it didn't grow. So, which system? I mean, Luca, that when you see that system, what does that mean to you? Sorry, Simon, for taking your job, but I'm just curious. When you see system,
when I see a system, well, that's a good question. Metaverse users will decide which system will dominate. Well, a platform.
Yeah.
That's what comes to mind. Platforms.
A platform, right?
I think it's referring to metaverse words.
Yeah, like Meta or other metaverses, platform in that sense. That's what comes.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say everything that is like proprietary and centralized stuff and non. So yeah, I think the big question and that's like a low-level question, but I think it's a question that most people that know little about Web3 and the metaverse are asking right now is which metaverse will prevail, or will there be one metaverse that will prevail? And I have my own theory, but I will tell you later. So Lucas, let's start with you.
Well, it's like asking what internet will prevail. So we had the internet, the Web 1 with the small websites. Now we have the Web 2 with the big platforms. Soon we're going to have the web of communities. And then we're going to have, again, and I agree 100% with Michael here, it's cyclical. So after the big decentralization era, we're going to centralize again, because we tend to, there's this bias, like whatever is close, we see it in a way, and when it's far, we forget about it. So now we are starting to understand how the negative aspects of a centralized web with the platforms own us, basically, and we want to decentralize everything. And then it's going to bring value, but also it's going to bring maybe a mess or some other problems we don't see now. And then we will want to centralize again. The same thing happens with democracy, and then after too many years of democracy, people want the strong man, and the strong man gives you 10 years of good life, and then brings you to war, and you got a war, and then you want democracy again. So it's cyclical. We shouldn't focus too much on like where is this going, because wherever it is going, it's not going to stay there long. So I say let's enjoy the next 5 years of 10 years of decentralization. Mm-hmm. And then, let's see what happens after that. I mean, we can't stop these waves. They are just beyond our control.
And I love this quote by Antonio, and it's pretty much summing up what you're saying. And we're always talking about openness of systems, but without some level of standardization, we will never get there. So I think this whole narrative of the good Jedi on one side and the evil dark powers on the other one, it's really just a simple reduction, but it's not the real.
I don't know. I don't really agree with Antonio here, and I actually know Antonio personally too. I mean, standardization is mostly emerges from open systems, right? Think about how you got Airbnb and Booking.com, the completely separate things, and for years there was no way to connect the calendars, and except from when they opened the APIs for the PMS channel managers, and what did they use to connect the calendars? iCal, right? iCal, which is basically a standard. It's proprietary, whatever, but it's a standard. So I don't know what Antonio actually means here, but I don't agree. Standardization is mostly it emerges from open systems generally. That's my feeling at least.
Yeah,
Michael, do you agree with that?
That's interesting. I do, and I also think even for this conversation, I think we're a little bit losing the point, because what really this is all about is interoperability for the consumer, for the guest, for the passenger. Mm-hmm. When that is successfully executed, which is going to take time, so that a hotel guest or a restaurant guest or a passenger in a cruise line experience, whatever, wants to pre-experience it. They have their avatar, they have their NFTs, they have their loyalty NFT, they have their Ready Player Me, like Adi has over there. One of the attendees today, he has a Ready Player Me logo. This is his avatar. When that can flow through the various systems or silos during the consumer experience or the enterprise corporate experience, that they can take their content and take their data and take their virtual immersive DNA with them across different silos of platforms and experiences, that's when this thing will be flying. And that's to my opinion, the major focus that in the travel, hospitality, and restaurant industry globally, we need to be focusing on, making sure we're focusing on the interoperability from the consumer, guest, and passenger perspective. That's going to make it win. Silos are going to be what they are going to be, as Luca and Lior said. Some will win, some will lose, right, Luca? Some will be bigger, some will be smaller, some will use certain types of crypto and other types of efficient transaction, secure technology, and some will have a better experience and some will have a lesser experience, and they will fail. But my virtualized immersive consumer DNA needs to travel with me everywhere through all these experiences.
But Michael, don't you think this is actually a consequence of the way we build on the metaverse? Because and I know you probably heard this story before, you got the clients calling you, say, look, I want to get into the metaverse. First of all, it doesn't mean really anything, right? And so the first thing you sit down and say, okay, let's take a look. So let's think about which metaverse is the best for you. You want to buy land? You don't want to buy land? What is your demographic? And you start doing all these different you're thinking about what kind of clients you want to target, right? And to a certain extent, I think this is a big adoption blocker, if not the main adoption blocker, because right now, let's say small independent properties, right? And that's the majority of hotels in Europe, for example. Take Italy, for example. The average hotel is 30 rooms, family owned. Now, in a situation like that, if I have to invest money in something, I want to make sure that something will be here at least for a couple of years. My concern is that, okay, we're going to spend some money to buy land and build a digital twin here, but then the community will abandon that metaverse. And without interoperability, we will not be able to move the space around. And that is,
but
so
Simon, I think we're overcomplicating in a lot of ways too, which is easy to do in what we're talking about. It's quite a complicated concept and a lot of moving parts. But you just talked about a small hospitality owner, like a small hotel. The metaverse and immersive solutions are another marketing and engagement tool in the toolkit for that property to be competitive and to drive guest interest and bookings and hopefully revenue. So if we're talking macro, like to the global metaverse and immersive scenario, there are some serious discussions to be had. But I'm not particularly worried about immersive pre-experiences or remote selection or differentiation of either like a conference hotel versus another conference hotel or a resort versus another. This is all part about digital marketing, engaging customers and consumers, providing pre, present, and post experiential value. And that's what we're recommending to clients, and that's what's happening today. It'll be around in 2 or 3 years, but also it'll change. 360 real estate photos, were the bomb 10 years ago, and they're all still here. Not a lot of people use them, consumers, but they're still here. So I don't entirely agree that it's like things are going to change so quickly that investments are not going to be driving ROI. I think they will.
Makes total sense. And let me ask you something, because we got a question. Jill, thank you so much. And Jill is on the background, the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain, and she's really the boss of all this thing. And she just sent me a message. So there's a question on LinkedIn, and I think, Michael, this is for you and Luke. How affordable, and probably more for you, Michael, how affordable is that at the moment for a small to medium-sized hotel group to build and maintain a presence on the metaverse? That's $1 billion question.
You want to try that, Luca, or you want me to go for that?
No, it's not my domain.
Okay. So the answer is it depends, which everybody loves that answer. It depends. There's not always a requirement to do, if we're talking about digital twins or we're talking about, a full-fledged representation in the metaverse or some immersive platform that's accessible to consumers, to have the entire portfolio of every single hotel, transitioned into an immersive version. It could very well be, that could happen if the budget's there. It's like any other significant digital marketing initiative, any other major digital marketing line item. It's another one of those. But the ability to have slices or highlights or very focused kind of hubs that represent the general experience of a property or represents the primary different choices of guest rooms, etc., that's a far more realistic, maybe that's the wrong word, far more manageable budget today than you think it is. So, it could be 25,000, it could be 100,000, it could be 500,000, but people in the industry, perhaps the person that's actually sending that question, they're spending those kind of numbers in their general demand generation, digital marketing budgets, and this would be just allocating some of that to immersive executions that can drive a ton of engagement.
I do agree with that, but I always say, look, if you wanna start by doing something, there's no real need to create like a full scale digital twin of all your property, right? And you could take pieces of that, and then maybe you can focus a little more on Congress part. You can sell the space so it's financially self-sustainable for a while, but you can start testing, right? So I totally agree with you, and I totally agree with the fact that, look, you had quotes from companies. I had quotes from companies. Building like a digital twin of a room or a meeting room is not as expensive as one may think. So yeah, I agree that probably this is going to be like baby steps. And of course, if you think,
but I will say, Simon, that the big component here is it may not just be the number, it's the quality of the work, like anything, like any other execution, the quality of the platform, and so on. And I'll say, and I mean, it's self-serving for me to say this, but one of our clients at Gain is called Rendezvous, and I'm going to plug them. They're amazing, and they have an incredible platform, and their response has been tremendous. Now, why is that? Because they focused on the experiential execution of these digital twins, of these focused areas of a property, and it's tied to a business model. It's tied to an actual use case that drives engagement, revenue, and loyalty for the property and the brand. So those are the conversations that we are having, and we should all have with our partners, friends, and clients in the travel and hospitality industry in regards to metaverse and immersive.
Yeah.
By the way, I think that. By the way, I think that the digital twin is a part of the experience. I think the users should get a more enhanced experience and not just have a look at the room. I think this will miss the point, and for me, I think it will fail. If it will only focus on experience the room, we did nothing. So I think that the minute that we will have more users that cannot afford to be a guest in a certain hotel, but they will be able to experience something in the metaverse, this will serve everyone, because the hotels will gain new customers and interest, and maybe attract new audience, and maybe they will save more money for that vacation now. It will never replace the real thing, not in the near future, I think. But we need to focus on an experience. That's what I'm saying.
100%. Yeah, you nailed it, Lior.
Otherwise,
otherwise
it's a second life. It's basically what we're doing. It's just VR. That makes total sense.
Well, what we said it last time, Simon. It's a perfect ad, Lior. Physics doesn't matter. Well, it matters differently. Physics matters differently in the metaverse and immersive platforms than the IRL, in real life. And the ability to have expanded experiential executions is what this is all about. And Gen Z is entirely focused on experiential travel, and they're also the first cohort who has grown up with being connected and having a supercomputer in their hand, either as a phone or an iPad, since they were a baby. So you have this kind of mashup between this massive, very lucrative, important segment or cohort of Gen Z, and the fact that they want, expect, and are looking for enhanced experiential travel. And Lior has nailed it with that. And
Lior, let me ask you something else, because I like where you were going with that. Because I think that that really in hospitality, the digital twin, it's like an obsession when it comes to the metaverse, right? And it looks like the main focus is, okay, we need to build like a copy of what we have and make it as realistic as possible so that users can pre-live the experience and ultimately book. But I think that this is not completely true, because something else that the metaverse can do and that is already doing to a certain extent is creating new revenue streams, and is in a way democratizing travel, because like travel is not for everybody. That's for some people it's a luxury, being that because of financial constraint, or think about like people with mobility issue. Like I was reading about this hospital in Naples, close to where I do live, and they at the pediatric department, they gave all these kids that were hospitalized a VR headset, and they experienced this football game, right? And I said, okay, that's very noble, that's great. And I was thinking, this could be like a great way for people that cannot travel for whatever reason, medical reasons, financial reasons, and you can create like a secondary revenue stream with, and of course it will never be the same thing as you're saying, but it will be as close as traveling to somewhere as you can get. And the same can go with like places that do not exist anymore. Like you wanna visit ancient Rome, So Leo, what do you think about that?
Yeah,
But
I think that what
go there. Yeah, go ahead.
I think what you said is genius. Okay, and it's the second stage. The first one, I believe, will be to try to attract people into the location. And the second stage, once the technology will be ready for it, we will be able to make a user's experience. I'm thinking about my late grandma, which I was very connected to, and her dreams were to travel all over the world. When I asked her, what did you miss in life? What would you do again if you could be young again? She used to tell me all the time, I would travel all over the world. And I remember her in her last year when she was at home. And I'm thinking right now, after you just said what you said, how amazing, how much I would be able to, would want to pay to give her some experience that we are now starting to make true. I would say,
Lior, here's what's beautiful about what you just talked about, and it's building on you, Simon. But this is really important. My personal belief is the biggest execution of metaverse and immersive technologies and what we're talking about, experiential travel, right? Virtualized, extended experiential travel, is when you, Lior, when you go somewhere, your experience will be recorded or in high def and some sort of, and you and her, you can take the slides or the photos, I'm getting at the metaphor, back home to her, and all your family can get together in an immersive environment.
And we experience the same thing again together. Or you can take her with you
together.
in a way.
Exactly.
Or you can take her with you from the start.
Live. Yes. Correct. That to me is where this is where it makes the most impact, for sure.
Yeah. So you think we're totally like in our industry, you think we are a little small-minded when it comes to understanding the potential of the metaverse?
Who's going to answer that one?
Let's not, you all answer that. Like, let's start with Luca.
Yeah, well, it's not about being small-minded. It's really hard to get a new technology and use it for what it's really for. We tend to do this skeuomorphic, and I use this word because I recently learned it, and now I have to show it off. This skeuomorphic approach, which is it is like, we invented electricity and the first light bulbs were in the shape of candles, or we invented concrete and we kept doing houses with columns. for decades or centuries, I don't know, because that's how we think. We it's really hard to see the next thing, right? So how is the metaverse going to actually bring value? We can't sit in a room and think about it and get it. First, we have to do the skeuomorphic thing. Okay, let's do the digital twin. And I remember when I was in Australia in 2000 and I couldn't get a job picking up fruits, I started selling websites. And that in the year 2000, everybody wanted a website, like bakeries wanted a website or didgeridoo shops. That was completely useless, right? But they wanted a website and they had to go through that. And today the bakery maybe has an Instagram account, which is bringing all the business, right? How could we guess that 20 years later you needed an Instagram account? So we don't know, in my opinion, what the metaverse will bring. And we can't think about it. We just have to go through these naive steps. Let's replicate the website. The digital twin is a website, like is the same process. Let's do it, and then let's get over and let's go to the next thing. So let's not ask too much of ourselves. It's a process. Let's go through it. One thing I want to ask, actually, Simona, because what is really missing in the booking experience, in my opinion, is not the hotel or the apartment, how it looks, right? You get these pictures, you have an idea, you read the reviews. What I personally always miss is like, where the hell is this hotel? The location. Because I see a Google Maps, which tells me nothing. And then if I'm really motivated, I go to Google Street View, which tells me more. I would like to walk around the area around the hotel and get a feeling for where I am. That maybe the metaverse can do that, right? Maybe we're looking about the hotel inside and outside. We're not thinking about the area. So I'd say this because maybe, again, the metaverse can bring us value in places we're not even thinking about right now.
Yeah, but have you heard about this European Space Agency digital twin project? I don't know if you heard about that. They're basically building a digital twin of the planet, and it's not for commercial use. As far as I understood, it's pretty complicated, but as far as I understood, the main purpose will be like to test different approaches to limit the negative effect of humans on the planet on the long run, right? So sustainability of the planet and so forth. But that could be like a secondary use of that. It's a little less noble, but I think it will be great. It's like, okay, now you map the whole planet. Yeah, maybe we can use it to understand where the hell the hotel is.
Yep.
Okay, Michael. Let's try to wrap it up. So it's we got just a few minutes more. This is always a very interesting conversation, guys. And again, thank you for being with us today. This is all a process. We're trying to learn new things, and again, there's a lot of speculation, and I think it makes sense whenever we get something new. I would like to end with this quote that I really like, that I think it's from Antoine, if I remember correctly. And he was saying something in the line of, it was saying something in the line of, Web3 will be for true believers or something like that, something in the line of that. And do you guys think this is how this is going to work? So do you think you will have like this idealistic people training the change and then we will have like all the rest of the companies adapting, or like Michael said, this will probably a mix of greedy companies and open source geeks. Michael?
First of all, I don't remember saying greedy companies or open source geeks, but I get what you're trying to.
Well, but I translated that. That is what you meant.
Yes, from my corporate speak, right? Look, I think what's interesting, and I'm going to be kind of a stickler, which I normally don't do. We got to go back to interoperability because that's what this particular session's about. And nothing is going to matter. Nothing is really going to have huge impact in our industries, in consumer industries, in enterprise, in education and training, if the ability for the consumer, the executive, the guest, the passenger, the student cannot easily and seamlessly transition between what will be the various islands or silos that are going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years until we have maybe only 1 or 2 or 3. So interoperability, and I still think like that's the nature of this particular session. That's where everyone needs to focus. That's where in the travel and hospitality restaurant world, brands need to make sure that they're making some decisions that have future-proofed ability to drive interoperability between what's now and what's coming. So that's standards and a lot of things. So I just kind of bringing it back because I think that, to me, that's paramount to the growth and success in general of what we're talking about.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. I just want to take 1 minute with each one of you just to say goodbye, and so they get the viewers can get in touch with you if they want. Lior, let's start with you. So what's the best way to get in touch with you? I don't know. I think
I'm not sure.
muted.
Lior, are you there?
Let's
You
start
can
with
reach
Luca.
Lior at getsound.ai. It's a very interesting
Okay.
platform. It's artificial intelligence enabled, music and digital kind of audio content. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah. I'm checking it out, and it's super interesting. Luca, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Twitter at tripluca, TRIPLUCA. That's where I do all my thinking and sharing ideas.
So you paid your $8 yet or not?
No.
Michael?
Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess the
How did I
metaverse
do?
is
How did I
not
do,
ready
Lior?
yet.
How did I do as your pitch man? I did my best.
Well, that was great.
You did great.
Probably.
I almost
probably
didn't
all in
join
my
again.
commission.
We
So
will
Michael,
settle
thank you
it
so much.
after.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much for being with
yeah.
us today, Michael. And
and
again,
to
always
reach
a
out
very
to
interesting
me,
conversation.
right, and just quickly to reach out to me, LinkedIn is the primary platform. Michael C. Cohen, gainadvisors.com. Thanks, everyone.
That's great. Lior, we already know that because Michael did the pitch for you. But if you want to repeat it, that would be great too.
Thank you, Michael. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm available in LinkedIn, Lior Nitzan. Also, getsound.ai is our website. So, we're open for many collaborations. And thank you for having me. It was a very, very pleasant talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. So we'll meet again
Thank
in
you.
1 month. Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lior. And let's keep in touch. If you haven't, we just published our viewpoint panel yesterday. So Jill will probably add it on the LinkedIn feed. Thank you so much. If you want to be in touch with me, of course, it's hospitality.net or just drop me an email at info@simoneporto.com. Ciao, guys, and have a good night.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Right. All right.